Sicily had at times been raided by Arab forces, but the province remained firmly in the hands of the Byzantine Empire for hundreds of years. This all changed in the 9th century with a character called Euphemius. Now, this fella was an administrator who began a rebellion on the island. Some say he was seeking that forbidden love by kidnapping a nun and forcing her to marry him, but others say he was simply dissatisfied with imperial authority and wanted greater autonomy. However, his rebellion was crushed, and he fled to Africa, where he went to the Muslim rulers there and said, "Please, please, please, please let me lead your guys on a conquest. I know the territory, I can help you." They said, "Okay," and sent many troops with Euphemius back across the water to Sicily. The Byzantine Empire had been weakened by a massive civil war just a few years earlier and had diverted many troops to repel a pirate invasion of Crete. So the invaders had a good old easy time. Euphemius got a bit brave from this success and thought maybe he could take back Sicily without the help of the Arabs and start ruling it personally. The Arabs then gave him the and he died suspiciously shortly after. Byzantium did try to retake the island, but more Muslims arrived from Andalusia and assisted in completing the conquest. Palermo fell in 831 AD, and though it took some time for other fortresses in Sicily to fall, with many holding out for nearly a century, eventually the whole island came under Muslim-Arab control. They called this country the Emirate of Sicily, which was nominally subservient to the Caliphate, but because of its isolation, it was basically independent and able to do its own thing. RIP Euphemius, you would have loved the Emirate of Sicily. So what was life like on Sicily after the Muslims conquered it? Well, many locals were killed or enslaved in the conquest. Not cool. And so the population underwent demographic changes as many immigrants started coming into the new country from North Africa. At times, other waves of immigrants came from Muslim conquerors after their defeat on mainland Italy, and Sunnis fleeing the Shia government of Egypt. Christians and Jews had to pay a tax for not being Muslim, which they could get rid of instantly by converting. An extra tax on poor people, which was basically anyone who didn't sit on a throne, was difficult to deal with and encouraged conversion. Additionally, Muslims and non-Muslims could not inherit property from each other, so if even one person in the family converted, it encouraged everyone else to become Muslims to avoid losing the family farm. The result was that 500,000 Muslims lived in Sicily, composed of invaders, immigrants, and local converts out of a total population of 750,000. The Arabic influence became very prominent. The Arabs named many things which have modern Italian names today, like Salimi from Saliman, or the port of Marsala deriving from Masala. The Arabs began irrigating and constructed many underground tunnels to provide water to make Sicily a very arable land. This helped them bring over crops suited to Sicily like oranges, pistachios, and sugarcane. Large villas owned by wealthy landowners dominated the production of sugar, and used slave labor to produce masses of it, which helped to create a dessert culture in modern Sicily. Its capital, Palermo, was considered a thriving city of great infrastructure, great beauty, and great wealth. So were they chill? No. The original conquest of Sicily was done as a distraction for restless troops in North Africa. As generations passed, the same problems appeared on Sicily as many of the Arabs felt more inclined to fighting than actually ruling. The religious inequality meant the more Christian area of eastern Sicily often rose in revolt and caused problems for the Muslims. A lot of Muslim men thought it was a great idea to make further conquests, and so they lost countless lives in needless battles that brought nothing to Sicily. Those who remained argued over who should be in charge and disputed the future direction of the country. The result was a deeply fractured country by the year 1000 that was unable to expand influence outside of its borders and was lame and weak. But we'll get through it as a community though, right? Wrong.
The Norman people.
Were Vikings who settled in northern France, mixing with the locals and giving it its new name Normandy, land of the Northmen. They maintained their Viking fighting prowess but also utilised the French capacity for ruling. They would go on to conquer England in 1066 and give us our lovely English language that we know today. But many people don't know of their other conquest. They were invited as mercenaries by various factions in southern Italy and soon began acting on their own accord, capturing territory and setting up states. In 1061, some of these mercenaries formed a band led by the Hauteville family. They successfully crossed over into the island and began their conquest, using one of the local Muslim leaders as an ally to take advantage of the divides on the island. Most Christians saw the Normans as liberators, and some rose up to help the armies of the Normans. Palermo fell in 1071, and by 1091 the whole island and Malta was under the control of the Normans. They basically did the same thing by allowing the island to remain multicultural, but encouraging Muslims to convert or to leave by introducing taxes on them until they changed religion. Eventually, the Normans conquered the entirety of the Mezzogiorno and called their land the Kingdom of Sicily, which became an important part of the Christian world. So the Muslims got to live in peace, and if I go to Sicily today, I can see the Muslim people and talk with them about how cool it is and how their lives are, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, the Normans did not rule the Kingdom of Sicily forever. Eventually, their dynasty fell from power, and a number of other contenders controlled the kingdom for various times. When a German family, the Hohenstaufens, controlled the kingdom, they became aware of a problem. Some Muslims were rising up and using guerrilla warfare to resist their status as the oppressed. The terrain of Sicily favoured them, and the German kings decided they were too valuable to just be wiped out in a difficult war. King Frederick II decided to move every Muslim off the island of Sicily and into an easy-to-control area. In the early 1200s, tens of thousands of Muslims were physically moved from all over into the city of Lucera, where they basically made up the entire population and they weren't allowed to leave. They practiced their crafts and trades alongside their religion and stayed an important economic producer for the kingdom. Wrong! Whatever you're about to say is wrong. You can't visit Lucera, you can't go there to talk to the Muslims, you can't say anything to the Muslims there. Why? Because there's none there. Unfortunately, the German dynasty was replaced by the French House of Anjou, who waged an expensive war against Aragon. When King Charles II found himself in a lot of debt from this, he looked around his domain for something to liquidate for easy cash. He sacked Lucera and seized all the assets. His soldiers killed many of the inhabitants and the rest were sold as slaves, allowing Charles to pay off some of his debts. He resettled the area with soldiers from southern France, and today the result of those cultures mixing in isolation is the language Feta, which is still spoken by a few people today. Thus ends the story of the Muslims in Sicily. Were they beneficial? Well, on one hand, they killed, enslaved and oppressed the local population, but on the other, they might have helped bring ice cream to Europe. Okay, that's the video. Bye. Please subscribe and watch my other cartoons. Thank you. See you. Bye.